The Auburn Tigers win again. This time they are thankfully back at home after quite a few games off. Your Tigers beat the Richmond Spiders by the score of 98-54. We got a lot to talk about here, so we're going to talk about the score, the stats, and of course the storylines from this game. This is our reaction for Auburn versus Richmond coming up right now. War Eagle, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of E2C Network Live, where we get together and we talk about the Auburn experience. What is that Auburn experience? Well, we define it as Auburn sports, Auburn culture, and Auburn family stuff. Better way to say it, an easier way to say it is if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. So thanks for joining us in what we do today. On this live stream for you, for those of you that are watching live or on the replay, we've got a reaction show for you. Auburn defeats Richmond by the score of 98-54. Just 2 points shy of the century mark, but thankfully a very convincing and dominant win at home, bouncing back after the loss at Duke in Cameron Indoor, reestablishing themselves amongst the best of college basketball. So much to talk about from this, some good storylines, things within and outside of the game as well, recognitions that we certainly want to give. But of course, we want to hear from you in the stream. The first thing you can do to let us know, especially if you're watching live, that you're here. Let us know with War Eagle, where you're watching from, all that stuff. Smash that like button. You can do these same things too if you're watching on the replay. But certainly, we would especially encourage those of you that are watching live to do that for us today. So let's talk about the score. Let's talk about the stats. And let's talk about the stories. I like to give you one of each. Obviously, the score part of it is very simple. 98-54, Tigers win. The stat to me that sticks out the most, just kind of initially doing a quick look through of the stat sheet. And it's not even an Auburn stat tonight. If you look at the score differential, it's going to kind of explain this one. 27% from the field for Richmond. You cannot win many places, but definitely not the Neville Arena, where you never win. That's why we call it the Nev. When you're shooting 27% as a team on the road, especially in Neville Arena. So that's a stat for you that stuck out to me right at the stop. And the storyline, I honestly am just going to do a feel-good story here. Today was the official, I guess it's officially official now, retiring of Coach Sonny Smith as the commentator and analyst with Andy Burcham for the basketball. Now, he hasn't been doing it for several games, but they did honor him at halftime. So we want to thank Coach for his time as a coach for us, as a commentator. And we're thankful we get to spend still some time with you in the Auburn family and hope you enjoy retirement. So that's your stat, your score, and your storyline. Let's dive into it. There's a bunch of ways that we can dive into these things. I like to walk through individual stats first and then team stats, but we also like to dive into what you want to discuss on the stream today. So let out yourself as you're coming in. A lot of you are already doing so. The things that stuck out to you from this game. I'm going to talk about one storyline first that I think obviously everybody noticed, but it's important for what the makeup of the team is going to look like going forward. Really one interesting thing here. Ja'Kai Howard is back in the lineup in a significant way, getting into the game very early. And I won't say that I was shocked. I didn't know what the game plan was. Obviously, we date this back to the time where there was the incident, altercation, whatever terminology you want to use for that on the plane that resulted in him and Jaheim Hudson having to be reprimanded and not dress out a little bit. And obviously Jaheim's came in during the Maui Invitational, pretty much by necessity, by some foul trouble to our big men there. But we finally see Ja'Kai Howard get back in significant minutes. Now, I believe he has already seen the floor at least once before, but he gets in early and plays 21 minutes today, 13 points, 5 for 9 from the field, 1 for 2 from three-point land, and 2 for 4 from the free throw line. 4 rebounds for him. He has 3 personal fouls. He does get a technical, which will only play into some storylines there. But the story for him is just his high flyingness, his ability to go up and get the ball, go dunk. He is a highlight reel. He may even have himself, as the commentator said, a top 10 SportsCenter top 10 type of dunk down there that we'll have to see if it shows up tonight on SportsCenter. But nice storyline to kind of kick us off today is that Ja'Kai Howard gets back into significant playing time and does big things with it. Let's give some credit to Richmond. Obviously, it's not how they wanted this thing to go down. It's obviously I won't call it, I mean, it's not that it's embarrassing for them as a program when you lose by 44 points, but this is a common theme for a lot of people that play in Neville Arena. 50, 4 to 98 is nothing to be excited about if you're Richmond, but Richmond is a team that, has won their conference, has been considered for tournaments, is not a pushover. Bruce really likes to bring in the quote unquote smaller mid-major teams that have that pedigree about them, either recency or are expected to this year. I think Richmond falls into this category too. I am impressed that Auburn just took care of business at home against a team that I think had some talent on it, some very good guard play at times, very speedy, very quick. Didn't really seem too afraid of anything. Auburn just got on a hot streak today, and we'll talk about that in the stats. So thanks to Richmond for coming on in, and yeah, you got your butt whipped. I don't think that they're a bad basketball team in any stretch of the imagination. Let's walk through some individual stats. How about that? Let's walk through it a little bit. Your top scorers tonight, there's 2 tied at the top. Miles Kelly with 15 and Tahad Pettiford with 15. How about that for guard play, folks? Right behind them, 2 tied for 13. So double up here. We might triple up in a set. Jakai with 13. And then Chad Baker-Mazara with 13. And then 11 was Denver Jones and Janai Broom. Janai Broom kind of in the bottom of the top scorers, which is really interesting tonight, although he didn't really have a need to do much today. His teammates really showed up and showed out for him to not have to take that center stage in a game like this at home, but still did some great things for him. The rest of your scorers this evening, we got Cardwell with 7, who had a great second half, and I mean an outstanding offensively and defensively. Have you caught on to this yet? A lot of the times that we've talked about in these post-game shows, we're not just talking about Cardwell making a great dunk or finishing an alley-oop. We're talking about blocks. We're talking about, defensive mindedness, how he plays, how he hypes his team up. This is an all-around guy who we see make all-around contributions to this team, and it's very impressive. So 7 points for him. Chris Moore gets 2. Jaheim Hudson gets 2. Musalek gets 2, and then I think that's Musalek. And then Chaney Johnson gets 7. We also see Patterson, Williams, and P. get into the game. So everybody got into the game. We almost had gooey fries. Those of you who don't know what gooey fries is if you're in the students, I think it's just for the student section. If they miss 2 free throws in a row in the second half, or maybe it's the whole game, they get gooey fries from Baumhauer's. And so you heard that chant, gooey fries, gooey fries, gooey fries. But unfortunately, the guy made it. So it is what it is. So that's all your scores for today. I'd love to hear from anybody. Who is your player of the game? Who do you got? Let us know who is your player of the game. I frankly, I think this one's a little tougher because you can't rely on the Janai, just covering up the stat sheet today, even though he'd had a decent game. It just wasn't a Janai type of game. But you've got people that showed out maybe in the first half, some that showed out in the second half, a few that kind of spread it out throughout the game in spurts. I don't know that there's a guy just looking at the stat sheet from here that you would say this is the player of the game. Let's take a look at a few people here. Miles Kelly is very easy, and Tahad Pettiford is because of their 3-point shooting tonight. 4 for 5 for Miles Kelly, 4 for 7 from the field, made all his free throws, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Pettiford is 4 for 8 from the field, 4 for 8 from, he only took 3-pointers for 15 points. He gets 3 rebounds and 3 assists, and about equal amount of playing time there. So if you're going to look at the 2 highest scorers today from the guard play, they've got pretty comparable stats there. Jakai definitely had probably the highlights of the game overall with his 13 points. And we already read through his stat line. So he's got a case too. Chad is 13 points, 5 for 8 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3-point land, all his free throws, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. The more complete stat line to me, if you're going to give a player of the game, is probably Chad Baker-Mazara. I mean, he was just there and present throughout the game, just, in spurts. What I see when we have a conversation around who's the player of the game and we're struggling to find that, that's a team win. And you're talking about it when you're combining that with a 44-point win, that's called a team win. That means nobody had to do anything, outstanding. It just meant everybody took care of business and we allowed others to shine too. So 6 players in double figures. Basically, I think everybody, including, where did he hit? Chris Moore gets 2 points. So everybody who saw double digits of playing time scored tonight. So it's a team win. There's some other stats to back that up. So if you got any of those, if you want to give a shout out to any of the players tonight, certainly don't be afraid to do that, and we will give them a shout out tonight. Also good to see Jaheim Hudson in there too. You know, now that we've kind of moved on from the incident, both the guys have played several times, have played some significant minutes. And so we're clearly integrating them and back into the team. Team stats. Let's talk about it a little bit. We'll walk through some of the big stuff here. Field goal percentage, I talked about at the start of the show. 27% from the field for Richmond. Ain't gonna do it. That's why it was the main stat that stuck out to me just at the start of the show. And then 48% from the field for Auburn at home. That's the type of stuff that you should be doing when you've got the home court advantage in Neville Arena. 3-point percentage for Richmond, 20%. Not good. 43% for Auburn 3-point, 13 of 30. We shoot a lot, and at home, we make a lot. That makes it very difficult to win in Neville, or it makes it, very difficult for any other team to win when we shoot this well at home. I had it backwards in my mind. We're going to talk about the big three. I'm looking at free throws first off, but the big three I always talk about here on the show is free throws, rebounds, and turnovers. Usually, to me, those are the three important stats that will show the course of the game. It may even dictate. It's not always that you have to win all three of these or win 2 out of 3 to win the game. More often than not, that is the case. But these three are the most important. Free throws tonight, Auburn actually only gets 70, so they break that streak of hitting my 80 high water mark, 70%, and they shot a lot, 19 of 27. So that's a little disappointing for me. If I want to find some area of disappointment, we could do better there. But again, I recognize I have a high water mark there, 84% for Richmond, so they took care of business there. Turnovers, 15 for Richmond, 7 for Auburn. I thought this was one that was going to flip more into Richmond's favorite as the game went on, because it seemed like we were being a little bit sloppy with the ball, but obviously our environment got to them. We win that category. And in rebounds, I think we were even further ahead than this until like the very end of the game. 31 for Richmond, 49 for Auburn in total rebounds. So those are the three big stats, and Auburn wins 2 out of 3 categories, plus with a high margin of victory. I think they correlate pretty well. If you break down the defensive and offensive rebounds too, 34 to 21, Auburn's favor 22 to 12. So all of those categories, if you want to break it down even further. Looking at the rest of the points, here's why when I start the show, when I give you a stat to start, it's not like the stat that tells the game. What I like to do is always talk through the big three and then the rest of the stats. And I like to find, especially in the team stat sheet, the stat that tells the tale of the tape. We've already talked about it a bunch, so this shouldn't be a shock to anybody here. But now that I'm looking at it and reading it completely, this tells the tale of the tape. Bench points, 7 for Richmond, 41 for Auburn. So do the quick math really quick. Getting close to 50%, probably like in the 45% range. I'm doing some math in my head that's probably not correct. Is from your bench points for Auburn. And we talked about that. I mean, almost all your starters are in double figures. Cardwell was on a streak to do that. But you've got 2 other guys in double figures off the bench, several others doing big things. The bench points tonight was incredible, 41 to 7. That is the tale of the tape. That is the stat that told the tale of the tape today. Other things that stuck out, I think, warrant us discussing would definitely be the assist. This is something that's becoming commonplace for Auburn, and it's a pleasant surprise. Not that I'm surprised that Auburn shares the ball. They have always done that pretty decently, but this is a team full of, I hate to use this term, but high caliber play. I was going to say alpha males, but high caliber players with, high probabilities for being the star each game. We're not just talking about Janai. We're talking about Chad. We're talking about Miles Kelly. Dylan could go on a streak and do this. Pettiford, any of these guys, Denver Jones could have a night where they're the guy, but they're sharing the ball so well. And there was a streak where Dylan is just eating in the paint because everybody's finding him in the paint. I mean, Janai was finding him. I think Miles Kelly found him at one point. It was just a great showing for a team effort. 23 assists to Richmond's 8. another tail of the tape if you want to throw that in there. That's just a great stat. It's becoming so good, the assist, that I think I'm going to have to raise my level of what is actually good for this team, because they are doing so well in the assist category, and they do it yet again at home. So great to see there. If you were wondering, Auburn never, because it is the Nev, lost the lead the entire time. There was a time for tied at the very beginning of the game, but Auburn they never lost the lead once they got it the entire way. And I'm just making sure that's actually the case, because stat's a little bit confusing. Yes, so that does line up now. We're looking at that. They never lost the lead the entire way. So this is one of those classic games where it's in the middle of non-conference play after some of the big ones, bookended between Maui, Duke, and now you've got others besides these two I'm going to bring up, but you've got Ohio State coming up this Saturday in Atlanta, which is a big one, folks. I don't want you to look past this one. You've also got Purdue coming up in Birmingham, and then several others to end out non-conference play before we get into what is going to be a wild and crazy SEC. So this is definitely one of those where you're expected to take care of business, even though it is hopefully against one of the better mid-majors or smaller programs. Thankfully, Auburn does show up, show out, and prove to any naysayers about what happened in Duke, and it was a good showing in a poor performance for Auburn in that environment. This shows a lot of people that Auburn has not lost its step and can simply take care of business. I would like to give a little bit of time again to bring up Coach Sonny Smith, because to me, Coach Sonny Smith is one. I'll say this from a personal standpoint, and I've said this on the Auburn Experience podcast, but I'll say it here again. Today, he was honored for retiring officially from being an analyst alongside Andy Burcham for the basketball broadcast. You've noticed he's been doing that less and less, and they've had somebody step into that role with Andy now this year. So it's been unfortunate that we haven't been able to hear his awesome ranting and ravings about refs' decisions and certain, I want to say euphemisms, but certain metaphors about how things are certainly going or not going. I'm going to miss that. But I can tell you from personal experience, having interviewed him, that he is a wonderful and amazing member of the Auburn family, and very gracious man who is very important to the Auburn basketball history. So it's going to be very sad to officially now not have him in that role with that official announcement previously, but the ceremony today at halftime. But wanted to honor him for a little bit for his history and legacy for Auburn basketball. It will not be forgotten, and thankful that we still get to hang out with him from time to time in Neville Arena when he is able to attend. Okay, we have covered the majority of the stats, the majority of the storylines, and certainly the score. If there's any final commentary, comments, questions, things, shout outs that you want to ask about things moving forward, now's the time to post them in the chat before we get out of here live, and then we will move on to other things. But let me give you a rundown of what to expect this week. Obviously, we've moved out of football season, so our schedule's changing a little bit in terms of what to expect every week. But you know that there are several things that you should always expect from us on Sundays and Wednesdays, barring schedule conflicts. Tonight, if you're watching this on a Sunday, tonight, the Auburn Experience live podcast recording and Q&A at the end of it. That's why you should always stick around to the end. It's a good opportunity to hang out with us for a little bit. Episode 105, we will certainly talk about that recruiting class. We will probably talk about this week for basketball and some other topics out there in the Auburn Experience, whether it's about Auburn sports, Auburn culture. Auburn Family is a flagship show. We'd love for you to join in and be part of that experience with us. We also have on Wednesday our normal Auburn Family Night. It's our open mic night where anyone can call in. You can participate in the chat if that's all you want to do. But certainly we would love for you to participate in the chat and the call-in portion of the show. Join us this Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Do not forget, we will have a post-game show most likely right after that. I say most likely because Kyle's thinking about a few things about where he may or may not be that day. But certainly the plan right now is to do that just like we're doing right now, right after. It is an early tip-off. I think 10 a.m. Eastern time, folks. So rest up and be ready for that for a post-game show. And lastly, but not least, always want to remind you to check out our links in our description, the ways to support us and connect with us. But one of the ways you can support us is by shopping through our affiliate link with Alumni Hall. If you go to our one link in our YouTube description, you'll find that there. If you buy something from Alumni Hall for this holiday season, it supports them and, of course, supports us as well. So thanks to them for letting us be an affiliate. All right. That's what we got. That's what we have up for you this week. Kind of wrapping things up in a nice bow here since Auburn Santa is here with us tonight or today. Time's running together. The stat, the score, the stat, and the storyline. We started off talking about the main stat being that 27% for Richmond. When we talk through it, the bigger one is going to be the bench points, 7 for 41 comparatively. Auburn dominates that category there. The storyline we mentioned already, the official retirement ceremony from analysts calling with Andy Burcham. That would be for Sonny Smith, and congrats to him. And we will miss him in that role. And certainly we talked a lot about Ja'Kai being back out there in significant minutes, having a great game, and struggled to come up with a player of the game because of how team-oriented this game was in individual stats, and it shows it in team stats too, which ultimately results in our score 98-54. The Tigers just 2 away from the century mark, but that doesn't matter because it's a dominating 40-point win in the Nev, and thankfully your Tigers have bounced back and found a way to respond after a disappointing loss at Duke. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, whether you watched live or on the replay. We appreciate you being here and hanging out with us to be part of our little family within the Auburn family. Till I talk to you again, War Eagle.